This lecture is going to be looking at modern arts and culture. 6.2, we're still working on global conflicts and their consequences, and one of the consequences is the influence on popular culture. 4 things that the AP wants you to know about is Dadaism, James Bond, socialist realism, and video games. Hopefully you know all about video games. Dadaism is a European art movement in the 20th century. It's definitely a reaction to World War I. Basically, the people who considered themselves Dadaist were anti-war, anti-bourgeoisie, a lot of anti-class structure. They felt that the social system had led to the global war that was associated with World War I, and they reflected that in their art. Here's a painting by Max Ernst called Aquas Submersus. You can see that Dadaists like to use some of the influences of Cubism, and they're still very geometric in their artwork, but they use a lot of color to create more of a feeling with their art rather than actual understanding what the work is supposed to be about. James Bond. James Bond was a spy character created in 1953 by Ian Fleming. After Fleming died, other writers continued to write Bond stories, which is why there's so many of them. There have been 23 Bond films total, and they've grossed over $4 billion. And basically, the development of a spy character during the Cold War just makes sense. You had the KGB, you had the CIA, and then you had all of the different levels of spies in the British spy system. The British were really good at spying, and James Bond is a character that reflects that. If you remember, James Bond is so important to British culture that he actually made an appearance at the opening ceremonies in the London Olympics. Socialist realism is an art form that came out of the Soviet Union that spread to other socialist countries. Basically, it's an art form that glorifies the role of the weak lower class as they seek emancipation, as they seek to better their lives, as they try to improve their economic standing in different ways. Censorship in a lot of these countries made the socialist realism very patriotic, and they tended to support the idea of freedom from the Soviet Union, especially since socialist realism spread into other states, especially the satellite states. Video games. Today, your video games really glorify war. Ever since 9/11, the video games have become more and more warlike. You can think about Call of Duty or Halo. I'm sure you guys are familiar with Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed has incorporated quite a lot of history into its video game programs, and the video game movement that's associated with violence is both controversial, but you can see that the global conflicts have definitely impacted the theme of a lot of video games in today's world. As we go on to 6.3, which is about new conceptualizations of global economy, society, and culture, we want to look at both popular and consumer culture and how that became global. Sports became really important and reflected national and social aspirations. You can think of this in regards to World Cup, Olympics, and of course, cricket. World Cup soccer, obviously since last year was a World Cup year, you guys are very familiar with this. Just some data to back up how important World Cup has become. 715.1 million people watched the finals in 2006. More people watched World Cup soccer last year in the United States than the Super Bowl in 2014. 2010, South Africa's game were broadcast to 204 countries on 245 different channels. Everyone in the world watched World Cup soccer. This is something that's new. This is something that people have not done. In the past, different countries would watch certain sports, like for football in the United States. However, soccer and World Cup has become this international sporting event that everybody can express their nationalism and their patriotism for their country. In the Olympics is another example of sports and culture. The Olympics have often been used as a place for political, to basically show political issues. We talked about how South Africa was not allowed at a couple of games because of apartheid. The U.S. did not attend the 1980 Olympics because they were held in Moscow. African American athletes used the Olympics in 1968 to bring worldwide attention to the U.S. civil rights movement. This is Jesse Owens. You can see he's on the medal stand with him and another African American won the silver that year in track, and they did the Black Power sign on the stands. They had to apologize in order to get their medals back. The United States almost didn't go to Sochi, which was the last Winter Olympics in Russia, due to the anti-homophobic policies of the Russian government. Instead, we sent some of our most outspoken homosexual athletes to do a lot of our broadcasting for us while they were in Moscow, or while they were in Sochi. So the United States, instead of not going, we just sent a lot of our gay athletes just to really tell Putin that he can't tell us what to do. Popular and consumer culture became global, continuing with B. Changes in communication and transportation technology enabled the widespread diffusion of music and film. Two cultural things that you guys should know about is reggae and Bollywood. Movies and television shows have spread American culture globally, and America has welcomed Indian culture recently. Bollywood has become huge in the United States. You guys are very familiar with this, and in Stanton in specific. And a recent Miss America actually won with a Bollywood dance. On colleges and university campuses, Bollywood groups and clubs have become huge. UF has a massive Indian culture group that does a lot in regards to encouraging more study into Bollywood and the different aspects of Indian culture. Reggae. Reggae is a music genre developed in Jamaica in the 1960s. It's associated with the Rastafarian movement. Rastafarian is an African way of life that believes in the existence of one supreme being who sent his son to earth, very much like Christianity. At one point, the emperor of Ethiopia was considered to be the son that was sent to earth. It spread with the music of Bob Marley. The laid-back attitude of Jamaica and the island's culture that is found in Jamaica spread with the reggae music. The Hindi Indian film industry is centered in Mumbai, just to go back to Bollywood, and lately there's more English in the films. It's called Hinglish. So what they're doing is they're actually making the films accessible to those who speak English, which is the predominantly most of the world. You can see that Bollywood is actually making more movies and making more money than Hollywood is. And they are continuing to grow. However, it doesn't cost them very much money. So you can see that they're selling a ridiculous amount of tickets, and then they're making a huge profit off of the films as people are watching them.